I'm going to put this in here. I usually talk pretty loud, so let me know if I'm not talking loud enough. And my name is Diane Allison. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, my name's Diane Allison. I'm a grateful member of the Worldwide Fellowship of Al-Anon.
Hi, Diane.
First, I want to thank the committee for having Mike and I here. As I said earlier, this is paradise. I mean, you guys have a wonderful place here, and talk about connecting with your higher power. It's easy to do here. I just sat on my balcony, at night and in the morning, and just the water, there's something about it that just brings me home. And so I'm so grateful. The committee, I know what it takes to put these things on. I've been part of committees before, the months, the year that it takes to do this. So thank y'all for, just everything that you have done to put this on. I want to thank Jasmine for picking us up and touring us around the island. I feel like I know something about Bermuda now. And, a lot of times you come to these places and you're in a hotel and you stay in the hotel, and the only thing you see about the place is the trip from the airport to the hotel. And I feel like I've met, as Mike says, my people. And got to see, where, some of Bermuda. Also, I want to thank the basket was wonderful in our room. That's kind of been our little treat that we've been eating on. So I believe Al-Anon put that on for us, and I really appreciate that. I want to thank Sue for asking us. It's just didn't have any idea what we were going to be like. And for me, when I come to this place, when I walk in the rooms, I'm home. Even in an AA meeting, I'm still home. And I consider you my family members that I just hadn't met yet. We are all really family. We all breathe the same air, and for me, there's just something about the language of the heart that's spoken here in these rooms that I'm just home. So thank you. And I always ask my higher power to speak for me. And if you like what I have to say, thank him. If you don't like what I have to say, blame him. I don't care. I try to turn this over, because the longer I'm in this program, the more I know. If I'm speaking from my head, don't believe me. If I'm speaking from my heart, hopefully it's coming from my higher power, what I've learned here to do. And I think that's all my thanks. Thanks, Mike, for the great talk, Myers, yesterday. I'm looking forward to hearing Cindy and Sterling and their workshops. I just, I love this kind of a weekend. I just, like was spoken at the Al-Anon thing, I get my booster shot. My meetings, I get my booster shot. When I participate in Al-Anon, there's something that fills me up here. And when I'm gone and out of town and not around you guys, I'm missing something. And so I just love that. Enough of that. I've got to get on to my story. As we shared yesterday, I'll try not to repeat myself from yesterday, and you'll have to get that tape or CD or whatever it is online now. I was born into a family. I was number 8 of 12. I was a twin also, Myers, and I like that they were the evil one. I think she'd probably say that about me, but
Chris does too.
Yeah. So, but I did have a twin sister, and we're fraternal, so we're just opposites. And I also have another set of twins, younger, number 10 and 11 in the family, a girl and a boy. And there are 12 of us in 12 and a half years. My parents were busy. My dad was not there a lot. He was in a profession that kept him, busy. From the time he got up in the morning, he had a routine of waking up. We had a swimming pool where we were, so he would go and swim his laps, get dressed, go to work. We would do our things at home. We'd have dinner separate from him. He came home usually after we ate. Mom had a steak and a baked potato always ready for him, and we had a drink ready for him. And he would sit down in his chair And we were his TV remote. We were everything. It was do this, do that. And when he got home, he relaxed. And so for me, alcohol was present, but it was never abused by my parents. My dad would just have 1 or 2 drinks to relax from a hard day at work. And my mother didn't drink very much. She was like me, little, and if she'd have 1 drink, she got really silly. And so it was only like for a party that they would have, for Christmas or New Year's or a birthday or something. But she just didn't really drink that much. But my dad just always had those 1 or 2. Now, they had friends and always had parties, a few parties a year that I remember. And there was some of their friends kind of drank a little bit more, and you knew they'd get all lovey-dovey and all that kind of stuff. And we figured that we'd just laugh at them. We thought, So I never really got to see a negative effect of alcohol. Now, my dad really was very strict, and my mom was the one is when Dad comes home, you'll get in trouble. And he believed in the belt and all that stuff too, but I only got it once. And all it took for me. I'm a rule follower. I am one of those people that I believe in the rules. Now, not always. There were some things that I did, but I had a good childhood. It was very full. It was always somebody fighting, somebody playing, somebody we lived in the neighborhood. We were at the neighbor's house. They were at our house. There was always like 16 people at our dinner table every night because our friends would come over and they were just family. Everybody was family. And we had a great upbringing in that way. I have 4 brothers and 7 sisters. So the brothers were interspersed between us. The oldest was a brother, and he would have some parties, and we would kind of watch from, far away, drinking the keg of beer and all that kind of stuff. I don't remember them getting crazy drunk or anything like that, but that was something that was really looked like fun. They were having fun, and my other brothers too. And I was raised in a strict school that was all girls in high school, which I really loved having an all girls school because they could go. We didn't have to fix ourselves up for school or anything like that. When we left school, we would fix ourselves up and go across the street to the all boys school. But it was really fun, but it was very strict, and a lot of values and morals were taught there, and I'm really grateful for that. They put the fear of God in me, and I really, as I said yesterday, fear ruled my life. It really did. I was so afraid of going to hell that I watched and, towed the line, and I was a good girl. And when the drinking started, it was okay. My dad, we would have, like for a birthday or some celebration, he would give us just a little bit of wine that was watered down or something so we could celebrate. And it just didn't do anything for me. It was just part of celebration. And so when I got into high school, it was, there was fraternities and sororities. And the drinking age at that time was still 21, but when I turned 18, it had turned to 18, so which was really nice. But I started drinking probably when I was 16, I was one of those followers. If you were drinking, I'd have a drink with you. I wouldn't overdrink or whatever because I probably did. I don't remember those few times. I just knew I felt bad or something, so I would just watch it the next time. But I always dated somebody who drank. Except for one time, when I go back and look at my dating history, there was one guy that I dated that was really cute and smart and well liked, and he's, there was nothing negative about him, and he really liked me, and we would double date with my older sister, and he wrote me this really letter that said, I know you don't like me, you really like somebody else, and so he kind of broke it off, and I was okay with that because there was something not there, and I look back at that, and now I can look back and see what was not there. There was no drinking. It was pretty boring. It just was, and I look at that now, and I think, wow, that just is amazing because I never knew what was missing in that little relationship because he was a great catch. But I was always after the guys that drank or did other things, and we just have fun. But I didn't see a lot of abuse, except for I had a sister or two that would, as Mike said, overshoot the mark. And I would always take care of her. She'd be throwing up, she'd be crying, and I'd just say, oh, that's why I don't drink too much. Because I would be really embarrassed tomorrow if I was like that. And she would dance on the tables, and we're still saving her seat somewhere, but, she just has a grand time, but likes to drink. She really likes to drink. It hasn't gotten her into any trouble, few marriages. But, it works for her. What she's doing works for her, and it's okay. But she was one of those examples of, don't drink too much, Diane. And so I'm a control freak. It was talked about earlier. And as Mike says, I kind of managed him a little bit too much. But he failed to tell me that because, see, in my family of 12, you had to be organized. Everything just had to be so. My dad was like that, my mom, everybody. And we have a joke in our family is when we would get a caricature or something in our family, we'd always headline it, let's get organized. Because that's what my dad would say, let's get organized, let's get organized. So I'm a great organizer. And for me, that's really a controller too. I can put that name on it today. And so I'm the only one in recovery in my family. And a couple of my sisters have come into the rooms once with me or something, but when they've had some situations similar to mine that I've actually shared my story with, a lot of them don't know my story, don't know everything. And it's not for them. And that's okay. It's for me. And that's all that matters. I met Mike, as I say, in college. Fortunately, we were both from Nashville, but we had a mutual friend who introduced us my second year of college. When I went off to college, it was somebody opened that cage and the bird was free. And I mean, wow, I had no curfew, I had no parents. I had curfews, but it was like midnight, which is probably longer than I had normally. And it was, drinking. It was 1970, and there was that other stuff there. And as I say, I'm just kind of one of those people that follows along, and if you were doing it, and I'd try it, maybe. But then I'd say, no, but you could convince me eventually, and I'd do it with you. Except for, I was adamant about one drug that I would never touch. And so I did a lot of crazy stuff in college. And as a result, my grades were not very good. I was on actually academic probation after my second year. But see, I'd already met Mike. And I'd already convinced myself that I was coming home because he was going to be in Nashville. And I knew we would be married and have kids and live happily ever after. In my mind, I'd already, mapped it all out. That's the way it was because, as Mike said, it was just something we clicked when we met. And we were just on this great high. I had a job. I convinced my parents, they didn't, number 8, you're not pushing to go off to college. And we all went to college, but it was like, if you're going to drop off, they never said anything about me dropping out of college. I convinced them that it was for their best interest that I drop out. They didn't have to pay for another person. I would have my own money. They wouldn't have to pay for me. I'd be on my own. And so I moved home for that lasted maybe a couple months. And then my dad was like, my rules, my house. And I was like, bye, I'm out of here. I've been in college for 2 years and on my own. I can't follow your rules. And so I moved into an apartment with the same person that introduced Mike and I, and we dated for 2 years. I had a job. I was doing fine, supporting myself. Mike had a job. It was grand. And then, that's when I started seeing some red flags. And, but see, I don't know if you're like me, but I can convince myself something's not happening. And I didn't really see it the way that I'm imagining it. Because that just wouldn't happen. Mike wouldn't do that. He wouldn't be like that. And so I just ignored those red flags. And when Mike broke it off with me, it was back, and there was a song, Que Sera, Sera. What will be, will be. And that was kind of my anthem, or whatever you want to call it, that, okay, he broke it off with me. That's fine. I'll go have fun. And he can see what he's missing. I remained friends with him, and I moved out of that friend's apartment, I guess because we weren't dating anymore. I don't know. I think she was after him, so wanted me out of the picture. That's just my guess. I'm not saying that is, but she asked me to move out. And so I found another friend, even a more partier. And my sister, that was my example of why I didn't want to drink, moved in with us, 3 of us, 3 girls. Parties every weekend. And I'd be sure to invite Mike. And I'd, of course, always have a date. And I'd be having a grand time. I played those games without realizing I was playing those games. It was just natural. It just came natural to me. And so, and he usually just have his guy friends. So that would make it easy. And as Mike does the fishing thing, yeah, I was fishing. And after a year, when he got his wisdom teeth out, if you didn't hear his story, under the thing of drugs that he was on because of what they put him on, he admitted his love for me and wanted me to move back in. But the only problem was, as Mike said, I had a guy living with me. I wasn't living with him. He was living in my apartment. And that kind of was a little bit of a problem. But it was easy. Because, see, I came home from visiting him from work, and I promised him I'd just bring him dinner, because I got everything else set up for him, and I said, I'll bring you dinner, and that's it. So I went home and told this boyfriend that I was taking dinner over to Mike, and that was all totally innocent. And that's really what it was at the time. And he knew my history. And he said, if you go, I'll be gone when you come back. And I said, really? I am going. I will be right back. I am dropping dinner off. And he's like, he put that boundary up. And I thought, well, if he's gone, he's gone. I don't have to break up with him. So I'm somebody, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do something. And I took him dinner. And, looking back at it, this dawned on me the other day when I was telling my story. I thought, who eats dinner after they've had their wisdom teeth out? I don't think anybody does. But, see, I'm such a caretaker and a fixer, I was going to make sure he had dinner. Insane. But I was insane. So, anyway, I came back. My boyfriend was gone. And Mike says, like, 2 days later I moved in. I think it was 3. But as I say, that's how sick I was. I had no boundaries or any of that stuff about why did we break up. Can you ever tell me? Didn't even ask that question. We just got back together and went on our merry way. And my mom had kind of found out that I was moved in with him. He asked me to move in with him, and I did. Because I wanted to know if we could live together. Because I was clueless of why we broke up to begin with. And I thought, well, I don't know if I can even live with this guy or he can live with me. So this is back in the 70s again, and it's like 75 at this point. We'd known each other 3 years, and my mom got wind of it and asked me if I was moving in, if I'd moved in with him, and I said, yes. If you're asking, I'm guessing you know. And so I don't really know how it went down. I used to say she disowned me. I just think with her values and morals and the history of some of my older sisters that I know now, it was really hard for her to, be supportive of that. And so I don't know if I stayed away or I was told to stay away or what. But it wasn't, she had told me at the time, her quote was, he won't marry you now. He doesn't need a piece of paper. And so for me, I'm like, well, I didn't, I wrote her a letter and said, if I'm making a mistake, I need to make the mistake and find out for myself because I love him. And anyway, we moved on, and 3 months later we got engaged. We went back to my parents' house and he asked my dad for my hand in marriage, and was with my mom, and of course once she heard that we were getting married, all was well. I was back into the fold. And everything for me back then had strings attached. And that's the way I grew up. The strings are attached. You do this for me, I do that for you, and that's just how it works. I didn't know this stuff about unconditional love. I really didn't know anything about that. So we got married, and life was good. 3 years into the marriage, we had our first son, and 3 years later, we had our second son. So we had 2 boys. We partied a lot those first 2 years of marriage, and did other things too. But as soon as I got pregnant, right before I got pregnant, I stopped smoking. Decided I wanted to be healthy. And my mom had smoked and actually died of lung cancer. So I decided I didn't want to be like her and not be able to quit smoking, because it took her a lot to quit smoking. I mean, she actually did, but it took 30 years to quit. And I just thought, that's history, and I better stop now while I can. And so I stopped, and then a year later I had my first son, and I just love being a mom. I love babies. Tiffany and I love babies. That's something that's just innate in me, that I think God has put me with babies. I'm just a baby whisperer, or whatever my friends all say. And, my best friend at the time, I used to help take care of her sons and stuff, and she's like, they like you more than they like me. And I'm just like, no, there's something about a baby, holding a baby. That's God for me. That's really God for me. And I've been blessed to be able to take care of babies lately, too. So I loved being a mom. I wanted to be a mom of 6 children. I was raised having little brothers and sisters and helping take care of them. And that was just home for me. And I realized Mike was really busy. He was really working hard. And it really, I poured myself into being a mom. And he poured himself into work. And it just things started going downhill. And, I stayed home as long as my boys, until they got into little preschool, and things were not good at home. But the more things got worse, as I said yesterday, the more I got involved in stuff, in church. I really poured myself into church. That's where my little serenity peace was for me. I didn't know anything about Al-Anon. I didn't know anything about alcoholism. I thought an alcoholic was, somebody in the gutter that doesn't have a home and doesn't, have family or any of that stuff. And that just didn't fit our picture at all at home. And so I would, his parents had an issue with a little drinking that we realized after 5 not to answer the phone anymore, because his wonderful, sweet little mom would turn into this other person. And that scared me. Because we were just drinking like they were drinking, a drink at night or a glass of wine or whatever. And so I would start doing those tests for Mike, Let's stop drinking for a while, see if we can give it up for Lent or give it up for this. And it would work. He would give it up. And I'd think, okay, so he doesn't have a problem with alcohol because he can quit. That's not it. What is it? And so I'd convince him he needed to come back to church for the kids. And we needed to set a good example and be at church together. So he would go to church with me. And he just didn't like it like I did. He didn't see the connection that I did in there. And that didn't work. And I took him on a pilgrimage, 9 days. And I think it was misery for him. It was hard for me, too, watching him drink there and being miserable. And I was really searching and seeking there. And I found a peace. I did find a peace there, that even in the situation I could find peace. And there was my connection to my higher power that I had growing up. And I'd lost it in college, because I realized I got away from the church in college, because I know from my value system and my morals what I was doing, I would have to be confessing it all in church. So I kind of snuck away from church. Because if I don't go, then it's not bad. But when my children came in, I decided to get back into church, and because that's where I did have some peace and serenity. That was my meeting room at the time. And so things, as I say, weren't doing good, and he was passing every test. He quit for that 8 months. We didn't know about AA and Al-Anon. There was no Google back then or any of that, searching the web for symptoms and all that, or treatment centers. We didn't know any of that. Yeah, I was just clueless, totally. But that's okay. It happens when it happens. And so when he was doing all these crazy things, like he talked about, I was questioning my sanity. I didn't confront. We played the silent game. We really did. When I was angry or something, I would just be quiet, and you could just read my mind, and you knew I was mad at you, and you had to figure out why. I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't have those skills. I didn't see it with my parents. I never, if they did it behind closed doors, because it was my dad. What my dad said, everything went that way. Mom never confronted, except for one time. She threw something at him and walked out the door, and I thought they were going to get a divorce. I thought you don't fight. Marriages you don't fight. You don't have any arguments. That's not part of marriage. I don't know where I got all this. I just, for me, it's like what I love. One of the Al-Anon speakers says is, these thoughts come up here and they land on my head, and that makes it fact. And I just have all these facts that I've just made up. And I still do that today. I know I do. I can still make up things and say this is the reality in it. And I think, where did that come from? And it's just made up, these things. And so I would just make up stuff. And when he started doing insane things, and I saw these red flags, I got scared. And I remember my mom got lung cancer, and I poured myself into taking care of her and being with her. And as long as I'm busy doing something else, I don't have to look at this. I don't have to look at us. And I can just deny there's anything wrong with us. And when that turning point is that when we finally went, and I told him he really needed to see somebody again. And we went to that addictionologist's office. And he said that he's an alcoholic and had been for 15 years. We'd been married for 15 years. We were living in active alcoholism. I hid everything from the kids. I sheltered them totally. They had no clue there was anything wrong with Dad or us. The anger came out at them. It was not, I'm mad at Dad for this or that. Dad could do no wrong. And Mom was the disciplinarian. And I didn't know that the marriage was going to work. I was doing everything. I was trying to be the best cook, the best mom, the best lover, anything, everything, thinking that's going to hold the marriage together. And until, they pointed out that he was an alcoholic and he needed to go to treatment and I needed to go to Family Week. And that's where I got my One Day at a Time book. It was just such an eye-opening. They told me in that treatment center that the word enabling. And see, for me, enabling was helping. I'm so helpful, people. I can help anybody do anything. And I heard today was control, a little bit. And I heard, early on in recovery, I heard at one of my book studies, helpfulness is the sunny side of control. I thought that was a compliment. I wrote it in my book as one of those good sayings. And when it finally dawned on me what it meant, I was just like, oh, God. I thought that was good, because I'm so helpful. I'm still helpful, aren't I, Mike? At times he has to remind me I'm being a little too helpful. And I'll get to a meeting quickly, try and call my sponsor. But anyway, so they told me to go to some meetings. And actually I signed a piece of paper and said, commitment is nothing. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. So I was going to go to those 4 meetings. I thought they said, imagine that's what they said. I found that piece of paper that said I'd go to 2 a week for a while, I think, and I just thought it meant 4. But I would go maybe once every week or something like that. Our kids were 8 and 11 when we got in, and like I say, they didn't know what was wrong with Dad. They just knew something was wrong with Mom. And the insanity that was happening in our house. Because Mom was the meanie, and Dad was could do no wrong. And I wasn't saying, I wasn't talking. They couldn't see. Anyway, it got to where, Mike, as he said, I would keep going to those meetings because I thought it would help him stay sober. I'd find the warning signs and stuff, maybe if he was going to slip or something. I couldn't hear in those, but I was listening in the rooms. I heard not, to listen and not really share at first. And I was listening, but I didn't think I was connecting with what was being said. And then I'd hear somebody share something about living with suicidal, somebody who was suicidal and the fear they lived in. And that struck home for me, and I went, wow, I remember that. I used to live that way. Because Mike was suicidal. At least he would share that with me. And it was horrible. I lived in that fear again. And that I thought, oh, I did. But see, my nickname growing up from my dad, I was his favorite, of course. And as each one of us think. And his nickname for me was Smiley. So that told me I needed to keep a smile on my face. And if you ask me how I was doing, I was fine. I was so fine. Life was good, and there was never a problem. Nobody knew anything that was going on in the household. We had the perfect marriage, perfect kids, smart, and everybody said, God, your kids are so good. I said, thank God they're good out there, because not in my house. But I said, I'd rather have them like that bad in my house and then good out there, so you thought they were good. It was just didn't match up. The insanity was crazy. And I started hearing things. I went to it was in a school thing, and I was at a parents' meeting. And you've seen the thing with the 36 faces, the different emotions with sad, happy, glad, and blah, 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 all those emotions. And in that little parent group, it was like, circle the feeling that you're feeling right now. And when it came around to me to tell us what we were feeling, I had none. I didn't know how I was feeling. Because for me, how was Mike feeling was how I was feeling. If he was happy, I could be happy. If he was sad, I could be sad. If he was angry, I could be angry. And I didn't know that's what I was doing. I was just clueless. So when it came around to me and I said, I haven't circled anything. I don't know how I am. I'm just I'm okay. And the leader of that meeting said, you are really sick in front of all these parents. And that lady called me after. I can't believe she called you out like that in the middle of the meeting. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe she's right. I don't know. And I see that lady, and I thank her for that, because that woke me up a little bit. That was a turning point for me. Where are your emotions? Where are your feelings? I just stuffed everything. I had no me whatsoever, no confidence whatsoever. But I was doing a lot of stuff. Sharing a lot of stuff. I was good on the outside, but on the inside, there was no confidence, nothing. I was Mike's wife. I was so-and-so's mom. I was so-and-so's daughter. I was a good worker, hard worker, but there was just no me. But when I started going to the Al-Anon, when Mike got honest with me, his rigorous honesty that he said, when he dropped the bomb about the infidelities. I mean, those flags were there. I just denied them. And when he got open and honest with me and told me how long it had been going on and with who it had been going on with and how many, and that just really put me into my bottom. It's where I needed to be. That was my bottom. And I'm so grateful for that, because I would have just been going to those meetings, keep going, listening to how I could really help y'all and help them, because I was fine and I didn't have any problems. He was in recovery, and as long as he was in recovery, I was fine. And all of a sudden, he put me in pain, and I got to remember hearing people in a meeting talk about that. And so I share about that in meetings because it's not shared about a lot. And I don't share about it a lot, but when it comes up, it does. And I've had people call me about it too, to sit down, because I grabbed that lady that had shared in the meeting, and we had coffee and we talked, and I said, how did you do it? How do you do this? It's not really in the book how you do it. I want this marriage to work. And totally, one day at a time, I told Mike I was willing to stay in the marriage. I had to do it one day at a time. I had to give up my marriage of what I thought it was and surrender it to, if it's going to work, God, you got to put a hand in it, because I can't. I'm going to keep doing what I'm supposed to be doing one day at a time. As long as I saw he didn't relapse or anything like that, I wasn't willing to do it again. I said as long as we were in recovery and we could keep growing. I mean, it was up and down. It was very difficult. What I wanted for amends, he wasn't able to give me for the longest time, until it really came to a head about 5-6 years into the recovery. And he was finally willing to give me what I needed as an amends. And from that point on, when he gave me that, what we needed, and we had to seek outside counseling for that and have mediators and all that kind of stuff, we could start growing. We could start a marriage. We could start building on trust. And we had to earn it. It was a day at a time for a long time. And we just continued growing. The kids, my children, got involved in Alateen. I asked them to go to Alateen and Alakid back then for the younger one. And the older one went for about 7 years until he went away to college, and he loved those Alateen friends. And I'm so grateful for Alateens and Amiases that sponsor the Alateens, because they really help my kids grow up. My oldest son just amazes us on how he does things. It's not how we would have done it, and I don't think we raised him. I believe that Alateen raised him. They really did. They gave him the tools. And Mike was doing AA and I was doing Al-Anon, and we had those tools growing up, all of us together, and we used those tools. And Al-Anon got me through so many things that was, into about, it would have been about 4 or 5 years, about that time, 5 years, where my youngest son got kicked out of 8th grade mid-year for marijuana in his shoe, and got sent to an ALC center. It was a month he was out of school, and my youngest sister took him on, because I was still working, and I was working in the school system where they were. And my youngest son is a lot like Mike's a lot like him, but we're a lot alike too, in that I was willing to have to quit working and homeschool him, because I thought I knew where he needed to go to school. He got kicked out of a public school. That's not easy to get him into a private school after that. They just don't want somebody that's gotten kicked out for drugs in their school in 8th grade, a graduating class. So we got turned away at everything we went, and I was working hard and calling and interviewing and all this stuff, and just could not get him in. My sponsor was so tired, I'm sure, of me, and she finally said to me, it was coming up on a month that he'd been out of school, and I just said, I've got to quit. I want him to graduate 8th grade. I'm going to have to homeschool him. And she said, Diane, why don't you let go and let God? I said, how's God going to get him in school, you know? And she said, just let go and let God. Because I'd already done the footwork. And she said, just let go. And I thought, okay. This was like a Monday. And that Friday was going to be a month that he was out of school. And so I put a deadline on God. And I told her, I said, okay, God's got till Friday. You know, this is the thing. For me, I didn't really have that trust yet. I thought God was in charge of the big stuff, and he put me in charge of this stuff. He put me in charge of my family. He had bigger things to handle than my son and getting him in school. That was my job. But I listened to my sponsor, and I let it go, and prayed about it. And that was a really nice 4 days. It really was. And Thursday night, I got a phone call. The Alternative Learning Center said, bring him in tomorrow. We have an appointment. And Friday, he was in school. God can even do that. But that's how I kind of had to do it. I had to give him a spoonful at a time and say, okay, God, you do this. Let me see what you can do with that. And, you know, I've had to do that, spoonfuls, to trust, to really know I can. He loves me enough to handle those little things and take me out of the managing job. I get to take care of me. But anyway, I thought it was the wrong decision. I thought God is probably not where I wanted him to go, but I'm going to let it go, and then we'll see in a year. Because in Tennessee, when they go in, they go in for exactly a year when they go in. And, you know, when he graduated there a year later, he got like 6 honors, and most likely not to come back. They were wrong about that one. But, and the most this, the most that, the most, you know, he fixed up their computer system. He set it up for them. They loved him. And, you know, it built his self-esteem. And when he was in school, he was as I say, he's been sober for 10 months. So he had that, I think that behavior, those issues and stuff that didn't feel like, you know, he could accomplish much. And that was just the best year for him. And God got to show me, you know, he knows better than I do. He really does. And I got to see that. That was like one of those things I thought, thank you. You know, I needed that. God, I needed that. And so I thought, okay, good, he's fixed. And he turned 18 and finished his junior year in high school in another public school. And he said he wanted to move out of the house. These are the things Al-Anon got to walk me through. Because I used you so much when everything happened. I mean, I would just grab hold. And I really got involved in service work, by the way, and steps, sponsorship. That's the key, guys. That is the key. If you want to get better, get involved in service. See how it works. Be a part of. Not just around the edges that's been talked. That's what I had to do. I don't mean to lecture you, but that's what worked for me. And I was finally listening to people. And I got involved. And I learned from so much and how to have a healthy family. So 18, I knew he was old enough. I got to love him and say, you know, I wish you well. I hope it works out for you. I didn't have to disown him. I didn't have to put any conditions on it. I just said, I hope it works out. If it doesn't, you're going to figure it out. If it does, good for you. And I kind of stayed out of that. You know, we'd have him over for dinner every now and then and go over there every now and then, but really backed off. And my oldest son was in college at this time and gotten engaged, as we say, and was doing well. And life was good. I mean, Mike and I were kind of empty nesters there. And we were off at a convention in Huntsville. It was a 4-day convention, and we'd gone. And this was like February, and Brian had moved out in the summertime. My son had moved out in the summertime, so I didn't check up on him, you know. We stayed in touch. And we came home from that 4-day convention, And fortunately, during that, we got to hear speakers that had been in the pen and in jail, and they'd found AA there. And we heard exactly what we needed to hear, because we came home to both boys at the house. And neither one of them were there when we left. And we're like, hey, and they said, come on in and have a seat. And we're like, what's happened? And they're like, well, the youngest son said, well, on Thursday night I got arrested with 3 felonies and a misdemeanor. Oh, okay. And I went to jail. And I was like, so why didn't you call us and tell us? And they said, well, see, you always told us, and this is not I always told them, but you gave me the words and the actions to tell them, when you make a mistake, you've got to get yourself out. We're going to love you regardless, but it's your job. I'm not going to get you out of your trouble, if you make the mistake. But we're here to support you, and we love you. We may not like your decisions, but we love you anyway. And they knew that. And so he had actually dropped out of school. We didn't know that. And had gotten involved in drugs and all that. And so I said, so how did you get out of jail? And he said, the older brother, he'd called him and told him where to round up the money and friends, and where he'd had some money too, and they got him out of jail on the weekend. And so we said, okay, it's yours. I hope it works out for you. But I had heard those people at that thing, knowing, I thought, well, God, maybe he needs to be in jail. Maybe that's where he needs to get recovery if he needs it. He knows our story. We are the example, but it's his to pick up if he wants it. And we never preach to him or anything like that. They just know we're open, and Mike says he developed that great relationship with him. So we got to walk through that. He got to get the lawyer. All of his life savings. We were good about the kids always putting all their money into savings. And Mike, when we got married, he was big about that. And so we always had the kids put all their birthday money, Christmas, everything into savings. They could spend some, but he had built up a nice little chunk of money that all went to the lawyer. And, being it was his first offense, he got a 2-year probation. And, some conditions, some meetings and whatever. And so he had to go to some court-ordered meetings. And he asked to move back home and asked, and we said only under some conditions. There's no drugs and alcohol at our house, so we have a sober house. And you have to go back to school. And he did that. And he lived with us for 2 years, went to college, local college. And at the end of 2 years, packed up and moved to California to do his thing. And you guys helped me through that, because that was so hard. Because I knew he was living on couches in his car. But, the only thing I was willing to pay for was his phone so I could keep in touch. And we also, we gave him a little, some little tiny bit of money and said, this is it. That'll help you. And you'll figure it out. Well, actually, he moved to Oregon, but that didn't work, so he moved down to California, followed another girl there, and did his thing. And, I just prayed. Y'all held my hand and told me how to do it and love him through it. And I lived on my knees. I lived on my knees. But I knew he was in God's hands. I had to come to the realization that he might die out there. But that was okay. It wasn't that it was okay. But I knew that may have been his plan too. I was not going to live his life for him. It was his journey, whatever it was. And we just loved him. And we got to see him a couple of times a year. He'd come home or we'd go out there. And, he did his thing. And we didn't judge. We just loved him. And because of that, we had a relationship. He could talk to us. And, he's, he's now 37 and has finally gotten a real job. He supported himself, and lived without insurance. You know, he had wrecks and surgeries and everything, but he did it all himself. But he said the biggest thing that helped him was when we let him do it himself, and we didn't get him out of stuff. When he had to pay for his own way, he said that just, I mean, when he got caught, he said that was a turning point for him. And, you know, we supported him with all the love we could, and he knew that. He knew he always had our love. And so now hasn't had a drink for 10 months. He knows AA's there, but I don't know that that's his route. And that's okay. You know, he talks to us about it, and we wish him well. We don't tell him he has to go to AA or any of that stuff. You know, I'm proud that he's doing what he's doing, and he's loving his job, and he's just growing up, and thank God he's still alive, you know. The oldest one that we got to go through is that he, you know, had gotten engaged in college, and he was going to wait for a couple of years and get married after college, and in his third year, they got pregnant. And I got to walk through that because I thought maybe they should get married first. And they didn't think the same thing. So I got to let that go and not even give them my 2 cents worth and tell them how I think they need to do it. And that they had insurance up until the baby was born, and then the mom was going to be off. It's her mom's insurance, and they were going to be again without insurance. And of course, I could go from 0 to death in 2 seconds. Everybody's going to die in my story, and it doesn't take long to get there. I'm just really quick about that, you know. I can just do it. And I thought, this baby, something's going to become, she's going to get sick, blah, 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 blah. They're not going to have insurance, they don't have money, then they're going to get in a wreck and all this stuff, and then it's going to come on us because we're parents and we're grandparents. It's just insane. I can be insane. Thank you, Al-Anon, for bringing me back to some sanity. That second step. And we got to love that little girl. Got to watch her walk down the aisle as their flower girl when she was 18 months old. They got married when they were going to get married to begin with. And it was beautiful. And I got to be a grandma. I got to love that little girl. And we took her every weekend, you know, for one day, and the other grandma would take her another. Because our kids were young when they had this little one. Mom was really young. And we let them have the weekends to grow up a little bit. And, you know, we just were there supporting them. Again, not financially. We had to watch their lights get turned off a couple of times because they weren't as good about paying their bills. And just hold my hand, Al-Anon, and tell me how to do this thing one day at a time. And pray, pray, pray. And we did. And that little girl, as Mike shared, this last May, when she was graduating high school, she and I were very close. I would take her on our spring break because we had the same school schedules and stuff, and Mom and Dad worked, so she would take all the spring breaks. We'd go to the beach, go visit whoever, and Mike and I drove her out to California. We took a 2-week trip, a road trip, seeing the sights, and for her to visit her other grandmother who moved out there and she hadn't gotten to see. We took her out there. We just did everything with her. And I would be the one that take her shopping and all that. And about 3 years ago, she wanted to start wearing boys' clothes. And that was fine with me. I'd take her and we'd go buy boys' clothes. And whatever. It was always, and I didn't have any judgment about it or anything. She cut her hair short like a guy. And I thought, well, this is a phase, and whatever it is, you know. We just love her through it. And then in this past May, she let us know that she was transgender and that she had started taking shots and that she was going to graduate as a guy. And in school, they knew her as a guy. I did not know they knew her as a guy, and they knew her as a girl because she was in marching band, and She was a girl from marching band, but she was a boy during school, and it was a little confusing, I'm sure, for those people. But she came out to us and told us, because we were going to have a little party for her, and she said, "I don't want my name on the banner. They know me as Aiden, and they don't know me as my other name." And so I was like, okay, we'll do that, whatever you want. And again, thank you, God. I had people to call, people to talk to. I had God that I believe this is, and the parents had known. And the parents, this is the dad that's so healthy. They divorced. He's been through 2 divorces like I've never seen. Did it himself, handed it to the lawyer. They did it. I was like, well, that was easy. I was like, but he's just that type. He grew up in Alateen, and he grew up with tools, and he's just an amazing man, this father. And they just told her, she said, "Why don't you tell, I'm Dee Dee and he's Bapu. Why don't you tell him?" This was 3 years ago, and they said, "No, that's your job. It's your job to tell him." And so she finally got up the courage. He finally got up the courage. And we've gotten to love him through this. And it's a whole new world for me. Instead of a granddaughter, I have a grandson. And I slip up on the pronouns. I slip up on the name. But he just laughs at me when I do. And when I call him by his other name, he'll go, "Who? Who? Who?" And I'd say, "Oh, I know. But I've done it for 18 years. Stop it. I'm not that quick." So we get to walk this journey with him also. We have a fabulous relationship. My brothers and sisters, I got to make amends to some of them and to my dad. My mother passed away before the program. And I really think I had a living amends with her. We were close at the end. And my dad, I got to make amends with him and accept him for who he was. And he passed away about maybe 15 years ago. But we had a great relationship. He was this controlling, domineering person. But Al-Anon told me, because I used to be the daughter when I was around him, and he would be the dad, and he would shake that cane at you and try to hit you or whatever if he got mad, because he'd had a stroke and some problems with some judgment issues and some other things. But Al-Anon gave me some tools and told me that I was an adult, and I could be an adult around him, and I didn't have to be that little girl. And when my dad would talk to me in a way that was like a father-daughter condescending kind of a way, I'd say, "Dad, I'm sorry, but I'm an adult now, and you can't talk to me that way. If you want to talk to me like an adult, you can. And I love you, but I'm not going to allow you to talk to me that way." And you gave me that. I didn't know that. I didn't know I could be an adult around him. I thought I was still always his little girl. So you gave me that relationship, and that got to grow, and we got to have a really good relationship before he passed. I also had a relationship with my oldest brother, who passed about 6 years ago of a blood cancer disease that took him pretty quickly. And I'm so grateful because I got to say goodbye to him before, even though he didn't accept that he was dying. It was really hard to watch his denial. But I still got to say goodbye. But I knew it was okay, and it was, he may have been in Nita Jaw's program, but he was okay. He was okay, and I loved them all, and I've got a great relationship with all my brothers and sisters. There's nothing between us, and I'm around my siblings, families, weddings, all these stuff that we have, funerals, and I just get to watch what I used to be like. Thank you to Al-Anon and AA for changing my life, because I can still be that controlling person. Now, I can slip back there in a heartbeat. I'm saying I'm not perfect at all. A few weeks ago, I had to make amends to Mike because I jumped right in and started doing little things, that I'm thinking I'm being helpful. I still need y'all. I still need this. And Mike and I have gotten such a fabulous relationship today. I wouldn't trade it for anything. The program just has given us a family, given us unconditional love, and I feel, such a connection with my higher power today. That spirituality has really grown from what I had when I was growing up was a religion, and today I have a spirituality, a connection with my higher power. And I just want to thank y'all for letting me share today and having us. And I want to close with one thing, and it's a reading out of our One Day at a Time book that, let's see, I've got it here. It's August 6th. And it says, "This is a day which God has given into my hands. If I could only realize what a tremendous gift it is, I would use every moment of it to make my life more serene, more rewarding." I'm going to skip down a little bit. "I would notice interesting things, the expressions on people's faces, a plant growing on a windowsill, the grace and charm of a child, an arrangement of clouds. Today there are wonders all around me. If I will only open my eyes and enjoy them." And then down at the bottom it says, "Today is all the time I have. Nobody can keep me from using it well. If I make this a good day, tomorrow can be even better. But because of you, you've opened my eyes and my heart. Thank you."
Thank you.